Hello, welcome to TechWebDots. Today I will discuss Docker bind mount and Docker temp file system mount. So this session is part of Docker for Beginner series, so please check out the link for the previously recorded session playlist to understand better. Let's move ahead without wasting time. So you must be thinking, what is bind mount? A bind mount is conceptually the same as volume we have learned in the previous section. However, instead of using a specific folder, you can mount any file or folder on the host. You are also expecting that the host can change the content of these mounts. In the volume that was not possible, but yes, in the bind mount it is possible. Just like volumes, the bind mount is created if you mount it and it does not exist yet on the host. At the time of mount, it will create automatically if it does not exist previously. Bind mounts have limited functionality compared to volumes, and even though they are more performant, then they depend on the host having a specific folder structure in place. So from the performance point of view, Docker bind mount is good. Okay, volume and bind mounts let you share files between the host machine and the container so that you can persist data even after the container is stopped, because the data is getting created in the host file system. If you are running Docker on Linux, you have a third option, which is temp file system mounts. When you create a container with a temp file system mount, the containers can create files outside the container's writable layer. So this time we are not talking about the writable layer. As opposed to volume and bind mounts, a temp file system mount is temporary and only persisted in the host memory. So it exists in the host memory. When the container stops, the temp file system mount is removed and the files written there wouldn't be persisted. So this is completely temporary. So temp file system mounts are best used for cases when you don't want the data to be persist either on the host machine or within the container. This may be for security reasons or to protect the performance of the container when your application needs to write a large volume of non-persistent state data. So this is important from that point of view. But in Windows containers, another option is available. You can mount an SMB, the block path, as a volume and persistent it to container. This allow containers on different hosts to use the same persistent storage. So we can mount it with the Windows containers. I hope this concept is clear for you. Let's move ahead to discuss the command which are required to create bind mount and temp file system mount. So to use temp file system mount in a container, use the temp file system flag, or you can use the mount flag with type temp file system. Very simple. And there is no source for temp file system mount, and the following example creates a temp file system mount at the application folder in the Nginx container. So we know docker run to create a container, and you can see this is the traditional command through which we can create container, right? But what is important here? The important part is we are using the mount flag, and in that we are specifying the type temp file system, and the destination is the app folder in the root, and our image name is Nginx. Similarly, in the another example, instead of using mount flag, we are using temp file system flag, right? And in this we are creating a container, but this time we are using temp file system flag, and we are specifying the directory in the root. Now the second important thing, so these commands are pretty simple, right? You can go into the docker console, docker terminal, and you can just fire it and you can easily verify it. And don't worry, I will tell you how to verify these type of mount. We can see in the docker desktop very easily. I have explained this option in the last session. And to use the, let's go to the bind one, right? To use a bind mount, you can use either bind mount To use a bind mount, you can either use the mount flag or you can use the volume flag. Volume we have already discussed in the previous session, so I will not give more focus in this session. In general, mount is preferred, and the main difference is that the mount flag is more explicit and support all the available options. Okay, and the mount flag does not automatically create a directory like the volume. If the specified mount path does not exist on the host, then it will give you the error. Okay, then how the command looks like, because the command is very important for you to practice. So here we are creating a container, and the name we are giving dev test, and what we are saying, the mount that you wanted to use, the mount flag type is bind. See, we are talking about the bind one. Type is bind, source is this variable, and there we are specifying the path, right? And the target here is the app in the root, right? And the image is again same, latest. Second one is the for the volume one. In the previous session I have already explained, but just given for the reference, the hyphen v for the volume, and the same output will be same, right? It is, but the kind of flexibility we are getting with the bind mount, it is important. So the last one, how you can verify what is bind with your container, right? So we can use the docker inspect and your container name to verify that the bind mount was created correctly or not, and look for the mount section. And for the tmpfs to verify, you can use the same command, and you can look for the temp file system. Okay, I hope it is clear for you. Let me run the command to create the temporary file system. So docker volume create driver local opt type tmp file system, opt device is tmp file system, and size is 100 m, and uid is 100, and the name of this temp volume is foo temp. If I hit enter, then it is created the foo temp. The type of this volume is what? The temp file system. So the next topic is Docker networking, which is again very important. So I will see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye.